everything. For those of you who don't really know what this program is about, we really have two goals. My name is Justin Perez. I'm the Vice President of the Communications Club here at Hodges University. The Communications Club just started like less than a year ago, or 1 year ago, and this is the first event that we're putting on as a club. This is also the first event that I know of at Hodges University for a political type event. Thank you. All right, we have two goals for this event. The first goal is really to encourage all of you to go out and vote, make your voices be heard. So we're going to talk about, why it's important to vote and why it matters to vote. All right, and then our second big goal for this event is to not just go out and vote and check a random box, but be a little bit intelligent about it. Go out, research, find out what matters to you and who represents what matters to you. So we're going to talk about being an informed voter. All right, so we want you guys to vote, and then we want you guys to be an informed voter. All right, and we wouldn't be here today without Hodges University. Obviously, Hodges University is hosting this event, and our first speaker here is going to be Dr. Wortham, Dr. Donald Wortham. He's the president. He's been president for less than a year. I think only about 6 months or so, 5 months he's been president, and he's really shown that he really cares a lot about the students and the faculty, and he's trying to bring everybody together, and he really has done a lot for us. He's really supported the Communication Club. He obviously supports this event, and otherwise he wouldn't be here. And his doctoral degree is in educational psychology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he has a lot of experience with education from having served at public universities, private colleges, for-profit institutions, and educational startups. So, Dr. Wortham?
Thanks, Justin, and also thanks to the Communications Club. I'm really happy to be here today. So I'm going to keep things brief. I unfortunately got to run to a meeting in just a few minutes, but I would like to relay a few facts to you. The United States of America is the oldest continuous democracy on the planet. Oddly enough, we're relatively apathetic about voting. Out of the 35 industrialized democratic countries, where do you think we rank in terms of our willingness to vote, our interest in voting? Top third, middle third, bottom third. Unbelievably, regrettably, we're in the bottom third. We're something like 26th or 7th of the 35. So as Justin just mentioned, we're here to change that. The two goals that he laid out are absolutely brilliant. I'd like to give you 3 reasons to vote. The first is just, let's be responsible. We enact our heritage by voting. Somewhat more humorously, we preserve our right to complain if we vote. No complaining if you don't vote, if you're not at the polls. So, yeah, there we go. Be responsible, preserve that right to complain. Second, and this is about preserving rights too at some level. Florida is what's called a purple state. What does that mean? What party is the red party? The Republicans? What party is the blue party? Okay, go back to first grade, kindergarten. You got your paint pots, you mix them together. The red and the blue, what do you get? And why are we called a purple state? Swing state is another way. Thank you, Justin. We're a swing state. What happened in 2000? Whether you're a red or a blue, what happened? Hanging chad. That sounds like a suit you buy from Brooks Brothers. What is a hanging chad? Well, what happened is that at some level, we didn't choose. The election was so close, actually, the Supreme Court essentially made the decision. Get out there and vote, whatever side you're on. Preserve your right to make a decision. That's the second reason. The third is representation. And I'm not talking about your elected officials. I'm talking about representing your interests. So you may be aware, let's think about this a little bit. So relatively rich Americans versus relatively poor Americans. Which group goes to the polls in higher proportion? Rich Americans tend to go to the polls in much higher proportions. In the 2012 election, families with incomes over, or voters with incomes over $75,000 were 80% likely to vote. You drop 20 percentage points if you go down to $50,000 family income or less. Okay, let's talk about age. Young people, older people. Who votes more proportionally? Older folks. When I look around the room, we're all young people, right? No, I'm not young. If you want to be represented, vote. I may not do a good job of representing your interests. Only you can. Whether you're red or blue or purple, get to the polls. If you are really enjoying this election season, you love every minute of it, or even if you can't wait for it to be over, please vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wortham. All right, so everybody's kind of thinking a little bit about voting and how you want to vote, and what I'm going to do next is we're going to have a video, and I'd like you guys to think about what does voting mean to you? You know, why should you vote as an individual, not like as a collective, not as a young people or rich people, but you as an individual. What does voting mean to you, and why should you vote? All right, here's a video about some of our answers.
Voting is important to me because I remember seeing videos and reading about Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, I believe her name was Elizabeth Burns, all being tortured, incarcerated, imprisoned, hosed down with water hoses just because they wanted to voice their opinion and prove that they were intellectually on an even par with men. And since they went through all that, I have to follow through and do my civic duty.
Personally, I think voting is an important right to a society. By voting, you are expressing your views and your opinion on how government should operate.
Well, vote means a lot to me because I did grow up in a military family, and I think our next commander-in-chief is going to be able to make decisions that are going to affect a lot of lives.
The reason I want to vote is really to just pay tribute to the right that I have that was given to me in the 19th Amendment. I'm honored to have that right, so I'm definitely going to exercise it.
But then it's not just about the presidential election. There's a congressional election in this election. There's a state representative. There are some local issues. There are some local people running, and I think that's very important too.
I think it's the best way to express your view and your opinion on how your society should be in general.
Also, it's just my way to support the candidate that has, in my opinion, my views and my ethics, so they can represent that in office.
I think right now that if I don't vote, it would be criminal for me. I mean, that's just my duty as an American citizen.
Oh man, I'd say look at the 2000 presidential election. One vote can matter, and there's numerous instances where one vote has mattered and made a huge difference.
It's always the best thing to vote instead of believing that your vote doesn't count.
Get out and vote.
People should vote in local election, general election, and any type of election. Because if you want to give your opinion, express what you feel inside, this is the best way of doing it.
Well, their local campaigns is probably the best place to start.
If you start with your local elections, those same people are going to go to Congress, they're going to go to the House, and they're going to choose the laws that you bring forward. just get informed. Go out and get informed.
Vote is matter. It's always matter.
You need to go vote.
Get out there and vote.
It's up to you.
So hopefully some of you guys could also relate to some of the things that were being said on that video. And hopefully you guys are thinking a little bit more about what voting means to you. But to keep going along those lines, we're going to have our first speaker come up, Gail Williams. Gail Williams is going to come up and talk to us about... She's going to be presenting Inquiring Minds Want to Know, Why Do You Believe Your Vote Counts? Now, Gail Williams is the Chief Diversity Officer here at Hodges University. It's okay, Gail, you can stay up here. She also graduated from here, Hodges University, in 2001 with her master's degree in business administration. She's been the Chief Diversity Officer since 2011 and has since then received the Diversity Face Award in Education. And due to her exemplary efforts, Hodges University received the Insight into Diversity Higher Education Excellence in Diversity Award. Say that 5 times fast. The award publicly recognized Hodges University's outstanding commitment to diversity and inclusion. She was also recognized in 2014 as one of the women who make Southwest Florida, and she received the Makers Award. Let's give a warm welcome, Gail Williams.
Good evening. My presentation will be done in the form of an interview. Welcome to the set of Inquiring Minds Want to Know, that other job that I'm thinking about. I'll be Oprah tonight. Okay. Oh, that's okay. My guest tonight, you've met on the video, is Johnny Doreen. Johnny is a Hodges University student who originated from Haiti. Johnny has a very incredible journey and is a very good role model as a student of Hodges University. He began in the ESL program. From then he moved on to get his associate's degree. He's currently in his last term for receiving his bachelor's degree. In addition to his academics, Johnny has been very busy in the Hodges community. He volunteers as an ambassador. He's secretary of the Johnson School of Business Club. He's a member of the Communication Club. Johnny received the Hodges University 2015 Diversity Award for his excellence. And he also is my work study in the Office of Diversity. If that isn't enough, Johnny is a strong advocate in the Southwest Florida community. He was appointed by the court to serve as an advocate for abused, neglected, and abandoned children with guardian ad litem. He also serves on the WGCU Diversity Advisory Board. If that isn't enough, he volunteers for Harry Chapin Food Bank. And very important to us tonight, he works very hard in the community, encouraging people to vote. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Johnny Doreen, to the stage. Johnny, the question for tonight is, why do you believe that your vote counts? And I'm making this inquiry because voting is very important. It's the cornerstone of our democracy, and it's also our civil rights. But do you believe that your vote counts, that it matters?
Absolutely. Before I begin, I'd like to say hello to everybody and to you, Ms. Gell. Thank you for inviting me. Well, voting is a very important part. The right to vote is a very important part and cherished right in our society. Therefore, I think everyone who has the privilege to vote should go out and vote.
in my opinion, as I said in many occasions, when you vote, you're expressing your thoughts and your opinion how government should operate and deal with certain important issues in our society.
Okay, Johnny, I've heard many people say that this election is unlike one that this country have experienced. And many people feel that their vote, it doesn't matter. They don't see the importance. It's all, to some it's a joke. It's so crazy that they wonder, should they be involved? Now, you shared with me that you just made a visit home to Haiti, and there is an election going on there.
Correct.
Can you give me some little information about that or compare the two?
Well, yes, there's an election coming up in October next month, October 9th. And one thing I'd like to emphasize is that in America, there's a lot of things that we take for granted that other countries don't have. It's, things that we take for granted that are gold and silver for those people, what we consider to be trash here. In Haiti, for instance, I've talked and met with a lot of people who are afraid to go out to vote. When I asked them why, they said they're afraid that they could be a target, they could be persecuted, their family members can be killed. And here in America, you have the privilege of going out and not afraid that no one will come after you or your family or loved one, that you will be killed. And I also think that it is this privilege has given me the opportunity as a young man who from in a third world country to really know what a free society is being here in America. And I'd like this opportunity to keep going and for those who are coming and to have the same privilege that I have and express themselves.
Well, if I'm understanding you correctly, Johnny, you're telling me that you're privileged to vote. By you being involved, you're in a position where you can make a change. You can make a difference through your vote.
Absolutely. In fact, if you want to see change, you must first become the change you want people to see. And another way of doing that is by voting. Because when you vote, it's not only benefits you, but it benefits those around you in your community. And it's also important to vote because when you vote, you are saying no to certain politicians who think that they're above the law once they get elected. Your vote really show them that they are not above the law. You elected them to work on your behalf, not on their own personal best interests.
Okay. So even though it isn't a perfect process, maybe the people or individual you may want to see in office, maybe it doesn't happen, but you feel that we should exercise that right and be involved.
Of course, if you recall back in the early 1960s, how challenging and tough it was for colored people and Latinos to vote. And now my generation, this generation, don't take the advantage of going out and vote, and they forgot on that aware enough of what sacrifices that made in past for them to have this opportunity to vote.
Okay, Johnny, our time is about up. So in closing, what message would you like to send to our audience about whether or not your vote counts?
Your vote does count. I'll tell you why. Because politicians know who vote and know who don't vote. Because when your community go out and vote, if your community fall below the percentage that politician knows, because they want to, they will see who vote and they will pay more attention to your community. And if less people go out and vote in your community, they know also. So you don't get much attention. Your community doesn't get much attention. But when you go out and vote, your vote does matter. What they do, they look up to you. They know this community is aware of what is going on, and they will listen to you when you speak. But if you say, okay, my vote don't count, I'm not going out to vote, well, you're missing out and your community is missing out. I think it's very important to go out and vote and show that you are very aware of what is going on in our society and of course in general, not just for you, but for your children and your community.
Johnny, thank you so much. I would like to continue this conversation. Would you come back and visit us again?
Absolutely, I'll be more than happy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Johnny. That was great. All right, so now hopefully that inspired all of you guys to get out and vote. I know that was pretty inspirational for me. Definitely talking about the communities and how it's important for you as a community to speak up and vote. And to kind of talk to us about Lee County as a community, our community right here, we have our very special guest here tonight from the Supervisor of Elections, the supervisor herself, Sharon Harrington. So Sharon Harrington, yes, let's give her a warm welcome here. So Sharon Harrington, she began her employment with the Supervisor of Elections in April of 1989 as the Fiscal Officer / Human Resources Director, and she worked very closely with Felinda Young, the previous supervisor. She's worked in all the departments of the elections office and was a part of the transition teams that worked on the countywide conversion to the touchscreen voting system in 2002 and the optical scan system in 2008. She was promoted to Assistant Supervisor Finance HR in December of 2002. Sharon was then appointed to fulfill the unexpired term of Felinda Young by Governor Jeb Bush in January 2004. She was then elected to the position in November of 2004, and she's been the Supervisor of Elections since then. So let's give her a warm Hodges welcome to Sharon Harrington. Microphone is on.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This project sounded like a really great opportunity for my office to come out and do a little education. I have a saying, and it goes, if I have to educate the voters of Lee County one at a time, by golly, we're going to do that. So I'm glad to see there's more than one. I think you'll pick up a lot of good information today. It's a great venue, and I thank you for inviting me. I'd like to start off with a little poem that I use to kind of lighten the atmosphere before we get down to serious stuff. It says, last night as I lay sleeping, I died, or so it seemed, and then I went to heaven, but only in my dreams. Up there St. Peter met me standing at the pearly gate. He said, I must check your record. Please stand right here and wait. He turned and said, your record is covered with terrible flaws. On earth, I see you rallied for every losing cause. I see that you drank alcohol and smoked a time or two. We can't have people up here like you. Your life is full of sin. Then he read the last part of my record, took my hand and said, come in. He led me to the master, and humbly to him he said, take her in and treat her well. She was the supervisor of elections. She's done her time in hell. Thank you, and I kind of have. Since 1989, there's been so many changes in our elections process. And especially, they talked about the 2000 election especially. That was a big one. We had a great time in Lee County. I remember Felinda and I leaving the office about 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's how long it used to take us to tally our votes, thinking we had a really great election. We didn't have any major problems. Now, there's never such thing as a perfect election. There's always going to be something, because you're dealing with people and machines, and things could go wrong with either one of those, and they usually do. But overall, the election went very, very well. We got up the next morning, and of course, proverbial stuff had hit the fan, and we were on a go mode for many, many months. It was a very trying time. There was some good that came out of it. Finally, we had people across the country that realized there are two parts to elections. not just the operational part of setting up precincts, getting poll workers, printing ballots and that sort of thing. There's an administration part of it as well, and it ties together. You can't have one without the other. Started looking at the administrative part of the process, and it's kind of evolved from there. One of the things that we talk about a lot is participation. We have 411,000 registered voters here in Lee County as of yesterday. And they keep going up every day. We're constantly adding more and more people to the voter rolls. If we add our inactive voters who are still eligible to vote and may show up on election day, we don't know, that's about 60,000. So we have close to 500,000 registered voters here in Lee County. We have 83% of the voting age population, yet in this primary that we just had, only 28% of the people thought it was important enough to go out and actually vote. 28%. There's a good thing about that. Losing the sound. There's a good thing about that. We were 3 points ahead of the state average. The state average was 25%. Is that what it is? Killed the battery. That's a hot personality. Just shorted it out. We certainly try to get people out, and I have a lot of groups that I talk to, civic groups, colleges, schools, and they ask me what am I going to do about the turnout? Because it's notoriously a low turnout here in Lee County, unless it's a presidential election. And I have to tell them honestly, that's not my job. My job is to provide every eligible voter the opportunity to cast a ballot and to know that that ballot's going to be counted. That's my job. But of course, here we are trying to get people excited about getting out and getting to the polls. Not my job, but we do it anyway. We have a very amazing community outreach program that up until the 1st of July, from January 1, did over 300 events. They were physically at 300 events, and we're right here, right now, for another one. We talked to about 12,000 people. We are taking the voting out to the community, trying to encourage people to vote. A free vote is what gives government its power to regulate its citizens. Yet in Florida, it takes a presidential election to draw as much as 70% of the registered voters. That's in the state. Nationally, a vote for the president has exceeded 60% of the eligible voters about 5 times in the last 45 years. And people across the nations are just wishing they could do that. Voter participation in the Sunshine State is poor, with primary elections drawing a low percentage of voters to the polls. But this is not just a Florida issue. It's that way across every jurisdiction in the country. There's no single answer to the problem of voter apathy. Sometimes it's the parties. Sometimes it's the candidates themselves. But they have to make an effort if they want to get voted into office to make sure that you know who they are and they agree with your views and your thoughts. It is this way in almost every jurisdiction in the country. Year after year, while other nations march, strike, fight bloody revolutions seeking democracy, Americans take theirs for granted. 40% of our citizens, 40% of the citizens does the voting for the rest of the country. So if you want your voice heard, you need to vote and make your voice heard. That is your vote is your voice. If you don't, somebody else is going to take that voice and do it their way, and they'll be talking for you. Government has the responsibility to foster participation in democracy by educating the public on the importance of voting, making the process honest, open, and convenient, and as convenient as possible, and ensuring that every vote is counted. We at Lee County Elections take that job very, very seriously. We offer 3 ways of voting, and I tell everybody there's no such thing as an excuse for not voting with the 3 methods that we provide everyone. And of course, we have some people that think that's kind of a waste of money, that we shouldn't have all this early voting or we shouldn't have so many mail ballots. But it's the convenience of the people, and it gives them that other opportunity. Early voting will be starting in the November election on the 24th of October and run for 2 full weeks to the Saturday prior to the election. You can go to any one of the 10 early voting sites, and those are listed on our website at lee.vote. You can go to any one of those, and they will print your ballot that you would normally vote on if you were going to your precinct on Election Day. Early voting is an extremely easy process. We have 10 sites. In 2012, how many were here in 2012? How many stood in line in 2012? I apologize. That was kind of a rough election with 4 huge pages of constitutional amendments written in what the government calls full text, which means as many words as we want to put on there, translated into Spanish, and we had a 4-page ballot with 8 sides. It just was a total disaster. But we've added extra sites, we've added extra days, we've increased the hours. It's from 10 to 7 instead of 10 to 6. And we have been sending out notices constantly about where those sites are and how people can access those. Our mail ballots have gone through the roof. For the primary election, we just had, in August, we had roughly 135,000 requests, and 80% of those came back and were counted. So we have a very good rate of return on our mail ballots. For the general election, as of yesterday morning, we have 159,958 requests for the general election. So we're seeing a lot more increase in the mail ballots. And believe me, they do get counted. Constantly, I have people coming up to me and saying, well, I heard they only count them if it's a close race. Nah, those are the first things that are counted. As soon as, before early voting starts, we test all of our equipment, and we go through all of the mail ballots that have come in that may have questionable signatures or the voter forgot to sign them. Once that is done, the initial, what we call initial canvass, we can start opening all the mail ballots that have come in. On election night, about 7:30, 7:45, right in around that area somewhere, the first set of results that you'll see posted either on the news, on our website, or if you happen to be watching us down at the office on our TV set, are the early voting totals all the way through that Saturday and all of the mail ballot totals. Last several elections, 2/3 of the voting population in Lee County had their votes in before the first results came in from the precincts. So we're kind of spreading it out. So those that had to stand in long lines, we can assure you that there won't be any real long lines. There might be a few little minutes that you may have to wait for somebody to check in properly. But we put extra equipment in all of the polling locations, extra equipment in the early voting sites, and right now it looks like we may only have a 1-page ballot instead of 4. Now, I want to talk about local elections, and it was briefly mentioned about getting excited about that, and it is horrible to have cities come in with 15 and 17% turnout because they're spending a lot of money for that election. Excuse me. They contract with me to do their elections for them. All the city clerks have already told me that if they have to do elections, they're all going to quit. They're going to grab their purse and go on home because there's just so much to it. But we do go ahead and hold the elections for the different municipalities. I tried to get all of the, when I became supervisor, I tried to get all the municipalities to hold their elections on the same day and have one big municipality election day where there's a lot of hype and a lot of media coverage and a lot of press coverage for the elections, but that didn't really come out that way. So we're kind of split up. In March, we're going to have 4 elections coming up: Village of Estero, Sanibel, Town of Fort Myers Beach, and I think it's just the 3. And then in the fall, we have the City of Fort Myers and the City of Cape Coral. I use this example all the time about what your impact is on the various level of government. If you have a pothole on your street and you go to work every morning and you're running through that pothole and it's tearing up your car, do you think President Obama is really going to care when you call the White House and say, I got to get this pothole fixed? He's so far removed from that particular issue that you are concerned about. It's unbelievable. It's like the outer ring when you drop a pebble in water and you see those rings form. It's that outer ring where that pebble went in. You're not going to get much action. You're not going to get probably much action from your senators or your representatives in Washington either. Because it's just a pothole, not anything major. Maybe the county commissioners, if you're an unincorporated Lee County, might help, but not in a big hurry. They've got other fish to fry and bigger fish to fry. But your city council people, if you live in a municipality, your councilman may live right around the corner from you, and mine does. He happens to be right around the corner. I can walk over and knock on his door anytime. He'll be able to listen to me. He doesn't have nearly the responsibility and the people to deal with that all of the others do as you get out farther and farther from that little pebble going into the pool. These are the people that are going to tax your dollars first. They're going to be in your pocket before anybody else. My tax bill from the city of Fort Myers is right under the one from Lee County, and it's higher than it is the one from Lee County. I live in the city of Fort Myers. They're going to touch your dollars. They're going to use your dollars. You need to have a say in who's going to be doing that for you. I know there's been a lot of talk, too, about term limits. We need to have term limits. I don't always agree with that. If you can get somebody that's highly experienced in a particular job, let's say away from elections, away from government, you've got somebody in your office that really has a lot of expertise. Why would you want to get rid of them just to put somebody else in there? If they're doing their job, if they're still innovative, they're still coming up with ideas, and they're dedicated to your cause, why would you want to replace them? Your replacement or your recall is the ballot box. If they're not doing their job, then you vote against them. So we can eliminate some of these people by just voting against them and not having term limits. That way we can kind of keep people in office that have that expertise, that have been doing the job, and that know how to get around. I still say the two-year limit for our House of Representatives is way too short. It takes them 1 year to find their way around the Capitol in Tallahassee, and then the other year they're campaigning for their second term. I really think that needs to be extended, but I don't make those laws, and I'm kind of glad in a way I don't. But we do want to encourage everyone to, first of all, remember to be registered. The deadline for registration for Lee County is on October the 11th. If you are not registered by that time, I will not be able to let you vote. Mail ballots can be accepted, or requests can be accepted up to the Wednesday prior to the election. If it's a local ballot that's going out, because if we have to mail it out, you have to have time to get it back to us. All mail ballots have to be in by 7 p.m. on election night. Anything that comes in after that time, we cannot even open and count those. So being prepared, being educated is the best thing that you could do as a voter, besides getting off the couch. Appreciate it very much, and I'm looking forward to lots of questions. Thank you. Didn't mean to make you run.
That's okay. Thank you so much.
Like I said, I'm looking forward to questions.
All right, so voting locally. Real important, like Sharon was saying, and just like Johnny was saying, local elections are real important. The state, the municipality, the city, all of those elections, and those don't happen all at the same time. So it's not like you can just go once a year and go every 4 years or whatever, and it's all on the same ballot. They have different election times. So lee.vote, it's on the back of your pamphlet. There's some other websites on there too, but lee.vote is a really good source to go to. Shows you where all the elections are. You can get your ballot like Sharon was saying. So that's a great resource. All right, so now as promised, we're going to go ahead and go towards the quiz, the participation quiz. So could you put that slide back up for me, Manny? So if you guys were a little bit late, there's an application that you can download, and you guys can all be part of this quiz. We can all join in together and answer, and we'll see everybody's answers up on the screens. And the application is Socrative Student right here. Socrative student. If you download that app on your smartphone, the quiz will pop up on your smartphone. You guys can answer the questions. You're going to have, it doesn't ask for any kind of personal information. It does ask for your name, but you can skip it or just put J or whatever you want, right? So you'll log into the room, and the room that has the quiz is going to be Perez 1714. So if you have your smartphones, go ahead and download that app. I don't know if you guys are kind of like me. Whenever I see, like on TV, you see politicians come up on there, or you see that panel of people that are talking about politicians, and they're talking about, oh, blah, 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 said something, 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 and half of the words you're like, shoot, I've heard that word like a million times, but I'm not really quite sure what it means. I think I know what it means, but I'm not 100% sure. So we're going to kind of test you guys' knowledge, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. And to help guide us through that, we're going to have Gretchen Gurr come up here. Gretchen is Gretchen is an avid learner whose passion for history has led her to teach both American history and political science on the K-12 level as an adjunct professor at UConn. Her students have gained national acclaim for their historical documentaries, and in 2012, she won Teacher of the Year for the whole state of Connecticut. She currently engages our faculty here on Hodges on how to improve instruction and learner success as an instructional designer here at Hodges University. If she could leave you with one thought to consider in our current political environment, is our nation's motto, E pluribus unum. Out of one, many. Our nation has proven time and time again that in overcoming our differences, we become a more stronger and inclusive democracy. So, Gretchen.
Thank you for the introduction, Justin. Hopefully on your phones, you've been able to get into the Socrative website, and there should be a total of about 6 questions. If you want to go ahead and answer those, we're going to take a look at your responses. Don't feel shy. You won't know who said what. So we have our first question, and I see a lot of people on their phones getting rid of that cell phone anxiety. That's awesome. We all have it, right? And the first question is asking about left wing versus right wing. So we'll give you a few more seconds to go ahead and chime in on that. See, about 11 people have joined, so we'll give everybody another moment. Yes, yeah. It's sort of like American Idol, right? Cast your vote. Yeah. So the question we're looking at is, left wing and right wing are terms that can exist within any party. What does the term left wing stand for? And taking a look at the results, looks like 80% of you, oh, a few more, 80% of you have it right. And what's sort of interesting about left wing and right wing is that both Republicans and Democrats have both left wing and right wing sides of their parties. So you can be a Democrat and be a right wing Democrat, right? You lean more towards the middle, more towards the center of the aisle is what they like to call it. Right? You tend to be a moderate. So it looks like most of you guys had that right. Good job. Let's go to the next question. And we'll give everybody another moment or two to take a look at that. Question is, what is a bailout? Not a haircut, a bailout. Right. Whoa, okay. I love these misconceptions. This is great. I've seen a lot of bailouts lately, right? Since 2007. In fact, recently, Ford Motor Company paid its debt to the United States government. In other words, they were bailed out. In other words, A is correct, helping a company with its debts with the intention the company will repay. In fact, since the bailout of Ford Motor Company, they've become one of the #1 selling cars in America. So cheers to the United States government for doing that. In some countries, like European countries right now, they have done the similar thing with some countries. You've probably heard that in the European Union, Greece received a bailout, the entire country. That's really huge, right? When a country receives a bailout. In fact, we actually saw for them, they had to get a haircut. So they're actually not paying back as much. So a haircut is when you don't pay back as much. Another little added fact. Go ahead, Justin. Next question, what does partisan mean? Everybody another moment or two? It's the best class ever. Go ahead, Justin. Let's see. Wow, again, we see the majority wins again. So yes, letter A is, Letter A is correct. It's when you're looking to support one side, right? If you're partisan, you're one-sided, right? You're supporting one group. Oftentimes we hear the word, there's not enough bipartisan congresswomen and men. In other words, there's not enough people that are willing to reach across the aisle to help their party, other party in need. So this is something that we could see hopefully more of in the future. All right, give everybody a few more seconds on question number 4. When you hear about healthcare reform or education reform or even tax reform, what does reform mean? I'm really looking forward to these answers. Actually, they're all wrong. Well, reality is that reform can be something that we create. It can also be potentially to get rid of a law, and potentially could be to change one. So in essence, they're all correct, right? There's no one answer here that is correct. They're all correct. So something to think about when we hear about reform. It could mean any of these. All right, and second last question. What do we have? What does flip-flop mean? Flip-flop. So this is a really interesting question because, believe it or not, although yes, letter A is sort of interesting, we oftentimes get really mad when a candidate we vote for flip-flops, right? When they change beliefs or they decide to go with something they originally didn't intend. But think about yourselves. How many times have you changed your beliefs? Is changing beliefs a good thing, right? And should we be angry at other people who do the same? And this is the question. If we have good logic, should we follow good logic? What do you think about? Justin, do we have one more? Okay, that's it. Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you today. I have some short and sweet little presentation for you. My experience in K-12 and on the collegiate level has been teaching American history and political science. And I've been really excited about being here today because it's a passion. It's a part of me that I don't really have an outlet for. So I'm excited to be with you here today. So as soon as Justin gets it up and going, we'll begin. Okay. Thank you, Justin. So whatever American you are, there's a good likelihood that you have heard of Abraham Lincoln. In fact, I would put money on it that you know he's on at least the $5 bill and the penny. Some of you might know that Abraham Lincoln was one of the most important presidents in American history, right? He was president during one of the most tumultuous times. Our country fell apart, and he helped put it back together during our Civil War. And you might also be that person, that American, that knows that Abraham Lincoln was sort of an interesting individual. He lost many elections before he became president. He suffered from mental illness, depression. His wife also suffered from mental illness. And he lost a son while in the White House, and to top it all off, he was assassinated. So whatever American you are, you know something about him. What's interesting about every single poll we've ever done on Abraham Lincoln is he sits in the top 5, and typically the #1 slot. So here's the question you want to think about today. Abraham Lincoln's known for great decisions. But what little known fact you might not know today is that he was elected with the help of third parties. Now, when I was a kid growing up, my mom would always tell us in the summer months when we were home from school to go out and don't come back till dinner. Anybody here? There's a few of us, right? And I remember that we were forced to go out and make friends and get along and find things to do. And typically we did that well. Occasionally, we'd have some new people join the group, and at times, they caused some conflict, right? New personality, we had some bullying maybe, or potentially we had a fight over what we were going to do that afternoon, whether it was baseball or go play in the woods, right? And whatever happened, we always would come home, finally, when Mom would open the door. And we'd sit around the dinner table, and my mom, being a counselor, would shake her head when we'd tell her stories about the people that we came into conflict with. And she would say, two's company, three's a crowd. And what's sort of fascinating about this is that those words still ring in my ears today. In fact, I can guarantee all of you at some time felt like you were the third wheel, or potentially didn't like the third wheel. Give an example. Anybody here ever gone out with a couple and you were single? Oh yeah, oh yeah. Kind of want to go home, right? How many of you have always been out maybe with some family and you're sitting around the table and maybe that odd family member, that person that you didn't really care for sat down at your table? All of a sudden you don't feel comfortable. You kind of want to just shirk into a corner and go home, right? So we all know probably at some point in our lives what it's like to be the third wheel and what it's like to be disrupted by one. In American politics, we see that third parties feel like the third wheel. They aren't typically accepted, right? They usually cause some discomfort. But I'm going to challenge you today to think about this. Sometimes third parties can help great candidates get elected, and sometimes they can create some great ideas. So let's think about Americans as voters. And actually, I was able to slip this into this presentation today. I didn't think I could get the Russian doll in there, but I did. What's really neat about the Russian doll analogy is as American voters, we have this ability to fit into a number of different categories. Justin, if you can pull those up for us. We can fit, in terms of our vote, into our local elections, our state elections, our congressmen and women, and finally, our presidential elections, right? We can vote in all those. What's sort of interesting about all four of those elections is only 3 of them provide a direct vote. What do I mean by that? By a direct vote. Go ahead.
Well, you're voting for the candidate himself.
Okay, great. You want to add to that at all? Or?
Well, you're talking about the electoral college, right?
We'll get there. Yes, you're onto it. You're onto me. You got the logic ahead of you. Great. So when we vote in our local and state and Congress elections, what we find is our vote goes directly towards whether or not that person gets elected. But when it comes to presidential votes, things change a little bit. In fact, when I lived in Vermont for many years, I found that third parties were all over the place on the ballot. In fact, I took a picture the first time I voted in Vermont. There were a total of 5 different third parties. There was the KISS party, like the band KISS. I have no clue where that came from. The Green Party, the Marijuana Party, the Socialist Party, and then the Libertarian Party. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is pretty cool. We don't usually see that when we vote for president, right? We usually see 2 major parties, Republican and Democrat, and maybe a third party. What's interesting about when we vote for that president, we actually don't vote directly for that person. Oh boy, what do you mean? You mean my vote doesn't count? You all have your constitutions you just got today, right? Page 27, Article 2, really important. Article 2 tells us how the president is elected. When this country was created, something really fascinating happened. Anybody know who wrote the Constitution off the top of their head? Come on, go back to sophomore year of high school.
I think it was Madison.
Madison, with the help of Governor Morris, yes. Now, what's sort of interesting about these 2 men, and actually all the founding fathers, is they were terrified of 2 things. They were terrified of state and local legislators voting on the wrong person for the president, and they were terrified, ready for this, of Americans. In fact, George Washington said himself, "I am afraid the will of the people will eliminate the presidency." Whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean afraid of Americans? Right? Think about if you were James Madison or you're Governor Morris, you just wrote this Constitution. Would you want to be the laughingstock of the world if your government failed? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, let's think about this. If you gave the right to vote to everyone, people who were illiterate and couldn't read the Constitution, people who are uneducated, who could they vote for? Another King George? Could happen. So what they did is they said that we're going to have a small group of people elect the president. And we'll let the states will figure out who will be those special group we call electors. Nowadays we call it the Electoral College. Okay, so wait a minute. Why would we even decide to keep that? Well, let's talk a little bit about how it works. So Electoral College nowadays works a little differently than it did back in the day. In fact, here's how it works. Here in Florida, keep going, there you go. We have a total of 29 electors. What does that mean? It means we have a total of 2 senators and 27 representatives. So a total of 29 electors. When we vote as Floridians, we vote for the President of the United States. If that person receives 50.1 or more percent of the vote, all those electors have to vote for that person. Okay, so let's take a look at how this worked in 2012. Skip to the next one. We'll just keep going. Run out of time here. So in 2012, I'm going to do some dancing up here. Florida went blue, aka went for Obama. That meant Obama won 50.1% or more of our vote. So all those electors have to now vote for Obama. Kind of a nice thing, right? All states work this way except for two, Maine and Nebraska. So what we can actually watch is some of the big states in every election, who wins them? Florida's a large state with 29 electors. California's got 55, Texas has 38, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York tend to be all really big electoral college states. In other words, they have a lot of people in them, right? Now what's sort of interesting is that in order to win any election, you have to win more than 50% of those electoral college votes, 270 total. In fact, there's a great website if you want to add it to your list of browsing. 270 to win will actually monitor the election in November to show you who's winning the most electoral college votes, right? In fact, those electors will eventually go and vote officially in February of next year. So with that in mind, let's go back to Abraham Lincoln. Let's scroll back in time. And let's take a look at some colors. I love colors. If you're colorblind, bear with us. In the election of 1860, there were a total of 4 candidates that ran against Abraham Lincoln. 4. What's sort of fascinating about this 4 is that if we look closely, you will see that Abraham Lincoln might not have won if perhaps he only ran against one other person. In fact, Justin's going to help me out. He's going to show me some statistics here. So I wanted to suspend your judgment for a second and ask you what if. What if Abraham Lincoln only ran against one other person and not 3? If we look at the numbers, what's really interesting is that Abraham Lincoln won a majority electoral college and 1.86 million votes. But if we go ahead and add up the total amount of votes for the other 3 candidates, that's 60%. Abraham Lincoln was not a popular president. So imagine this. Imagine if we were to cross out John Bell, Stephen Douglas from this list, and just have 2 candidates. There's a good possibility Abraham Lincoln would not have won that election. Now, I want you to think deeply about this. I want you to think about third parties. Third parties have this ability. We can keep going, Justin. I'm sorry, there's a lot of little extras in there. Third parties have this ability to enable a major candidate, Republican or Democrat, to become president, just like in this case. But third parties also do some other things. They give us some great ideas. Anybody ever heard of the Free Soil Party? Probably never did, right? That history class I forgot all about. I had that teacher. So the Free Soil Party in 1840, 30 years before slavery was abolished, was advocating against slavery. 30 years before. Third parties have this amazing ability to give us ideas that eventually, at times, come to fruition. Think about Bernie Sanders in this past campaign. He gave Hillary Clinton a lot of ideas that she's had to adopt. So third parties can be really important to changing how we think. And in the case of Abraham Lincoln, they can also give us one of the greatest presidents in American history. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Gretchen. All right, so we are winding down here. We have one more speaker to go, but hang in there because we're going to have a lot of extras afterwards, okay? So we're going to have like the giveaways. Everybody still has your tickets, right? We ripped off a ticket, so we're going to do some giveaways and stuff like that. Our next speaker is the director of the library here at Hodges University, and Gail Herring. She's going to come up here and talk to us about being an informed voter. Remember, our second goal of tonight is to have you guys not just go out and be inspired to go out to vote, but also to be an informed voter. So, Gail.
Hi, is this good? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'll be brief. When Justin asked me to speak, he said, Gail, could you speak a little bit about critical thinking? So I immediately knew that he pays attention to the information literacy courses that we give our students here. And that sounded pretty academic, so I decided to call it, being an informed voter. So I just want to highlight briefly the importance of being an informed voter and why. So on November 8th, 2016, hold on a second. Whoops. What do I press?
The arrow.
The arrow?
The arrow?
I think you got to point it up.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Thank you. So on November 8th, 2016, a total of 469 seats in the U.S. Congress, 34 or 35, are up for election, including that key to the Oval Office. So what should you do, or what should you have been doing these last months to be an informed voter? First of all, register to vote. And we already had a nice presentation on the importance of that. And you've learned about that today. I looked into where you can learn about where you can vote in your states. Many states do allow you to register online. Florida doesn't, but you can contact your state election office to get absentee ballots and so forth. We do allow? Okay, there we go. Okay. So, and then a website is voteusa.gov that can keep you informed for individual states. The second thing is, stay informed. Luckily, there are a lot of great ways to stay informed. You don't actually have to read the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or whatever it is that you follow. We've got the radio, TV, internet feeds, and so forth, local paper. So do stay informed with what's happening in your local community. As I continue for the last three, you're saying, well, these are all common sense. Yes, I do these, but at the very end, I'm going to hopefully illustrate very strongly why this is important. Fact check. Actually, I maybe will check some of those figures and statements that Dr. Wortham was throwing around at us at the beginning of the program. Question everything. Factcheck.org is a website that is useful. That's produced by the Annenberg School of Public Policy from the University of Pennsylvania. Use Google, but make sure you use credible sources. Don't let candidates spoon feed you the facts and figures. When a candidate maybe says that he viewed that undercover video and then makes a statement about it, maybe you as the listener should make sure that that video exists. When a candidate says making public colleges free will fix America, look into the implications of such a change. So I use that as an example to really check any kind of statement. The implications are really important to consider. Always beware of numbers. Sure, a candidate's numbers may technically be accurate, but they may only represent one part of the story. And consider what percentage that actually represents. For many years, I worked for a large PR firm in New York. I know how you can make the numbers speak for your side. So, do fact check. Keep an open mind. I guess this illustration works. What I want to illustrate here is, as Gretchen mentioned, we have bipartisan politics, but we feel that we maybe need to pick a side. It's okay to flip-flop. We need to be, you do a little homework, you do a little fact-checking and change your mind. I think that's okay. And it's okay to agree with maybe both sides on different issues. So That's the fourth one. And the last one is to get excited. I mean, even when in the library we have students do research papers and they're allowed to pick a topic, we tell them, if you're going to spend the time and effort getting into something, try to get excited about your topic. So hopefully getting excited about the issues in your community and in this election is important. So these 5 tips, it's easy to think that simply voting is doing your part, regardless if you really understand what you're voting for. But mindlessly checking those boxes and getting your I voted sticker really can be a detriment to the outcome of the election or whatever you're voting for. I think certainly the best example of this would be the recent Brexit or British exit situation. And that refers to the referendum on Thursday, June 23rd, in which British citizens voted to leave the European Union. The Leave side won 52% to 48%. Turnout for that was 71.8%. Immediately following the referendum, if you recall, shockwaves were sent around the world. The British pound plummeted to its lowest value in decades. But this is what I heard that was really interesting. Soon after the news of the Brexit exit broke, Google Trends reported that there was a 250% spike, this is after the election, in the question, what happens if we leave the EU? Okay? We're laughing, but you know, it was serious, because that number, one would think, illustrates a certain level of ignorance among the British voters. Or, after the fact, a strong yearning for an understanding of what they had just participated in by voting. So I hope reminding you of these 5 points will illustrate the importance of being an informed voter. Okay.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you so much. All right, so I couldn't have said it better myself for sure. And that's an excellent analogy there for the Brexit. You know, go out there and vote for sure, but know what you're voting for. Know what matters to you, and know how to represent yourself and your community when you do vote, right? So, all right, really, thank you very much for all the speakers that have come here. I would like to have all our speakers come up here one more time, because we do have a thank you gift for all of you, Sharon, Gail, and Gretchen. And Johnny, we didn't forget you either. You come on up here too. All right. One more round of applause. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you. So we are running a little out of time. I know a lot of you guys have classes to get to. Don't worry, your professors will forgive you if you tell them that you were here, I promise. Okay? So we do have cards on the table, and I apologize because I should have mentioned it at the very beginning. But if you guys have any questions for any of the speakers, or any questions about elections, voting, anything like that, jot it down on that card and bring it over to this table over here, and we will try and see if we can get to them. And after we do all the thank yous and giveaways and everything, if you guys can hang around for a few extra minutes, we will definitely get to those questions, okay? So before we do that, I would like to have Monica O'Brien. She is the president of the Communications Club. She's going to come up here and tell you guys a little bit about our club. So if you're interested, you guys can join, all of you.
As Justin mentioned in the very beginning, we are a relatively new club, in fact, the newest club at the school. And we've actually been able to accomplish a lot just in the last year that we've been in existence. We've done some donation drives. We did one for ARC, Animal Refuge Center. And going forward into the next fall term, we've got a lot more planned. We haven't decided on our charity yet, but we are planning to do something for a charity organization. All the clubs in general always do Galisano Children's Hospital. We actually do a snow pile event for that. We're also going to join in with Ambassadors Club to do their giving tree. That's Ashley over there. She's the chair of the Ambassadors Club. But Justin and Ashley are also officers in our club. And we appreciate all the support of everybody that came out to see the event. We especially appreciate everyone who put so much into making this happen and helping get our club's face out there. And one of the biggest things we do as well, that I think may be most important, is we represent Hodges University out there in the community. And you know, getting us out there more and being the communication club, it's important to get people to learn how to communicate more. One of the biggest things we've also started is we started a program with the ESL bridge students. And what that is to help the bridge students transition into regular college classes. So we hold little parties, little events to get together with them and just help them to communicate more. We've got 2 of our students over there. So being that we're trying to really make this happen and we're trying to get out there and do some really good things, I want to ask you all something. We've got a little donation box by the front that's out there to help support the club and get us to do more productive things in representing our club in the community. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm a little brain dead. And I would really appreciate personally, and I know our club would appreciate if you guys put a little donation in there. And again, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Monica. All right, just a few more minutes to go. Before we do our giveaways, I'd like to have Andrea Fortin, Professor Andrea Fortin. She's the advisor for the Communications Club, and she was the main cog for this event, okay? Don't let her fool you. She's probably going to tell you that I did everything. I didn't really do very much, okay? She put everybody together. She put us all in a room. She kind of told me I'm in charge, but she's the one that emailed everybody and got everybody put together, and she was really the main force behind putting all of this together. So thank you, Andrea Fortin, and she's going to have a few words for us.
I take none of the credit. So I'm here with a sheet of people that made this possible today. And I want to thank every single person in this room, even if you're just here for the extra credit or the free food or the giveaways. I'm glad you were here because we had some fantastic speakers today. And it's really important that you came out here today, no matter what your reason was. And this event only came together with the help of a lot of people. And so I'm going to tell you about all of them. First of all, thank you again to our speakers, Gretchen Gurr, Sharon Harrington, Gail Williams, Johnny Doreen, and Gail Herring. You made this event memorable and informative, and we want to thank you for your energy, time, and enthusiasm, and for educating us. And all of our generous sponsors that you will benefit from, maybe, if your prize, your ticket gets selected. Chili's, Begonia Cuban Restaurant, our delicious food if you partook in that today. Tijuana Flats and Tropical Smoothie. The library for helping us get those pocket constitutions for everybody, so grab one on your way out if you didn't get one already. the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, the Center for Lifelong Learning, the Hispanic Institute for helping us get the word out about this event, the Lee County Elections Office for coming out to help register voters, our incredible marketing team at Hodges University. They made that great flyer if you got to see it, and they answered many of our questions. Manny in the back, who is on the camera, he is fantastic. He helped us put together that video, the wonderful video that you saw, and he's helping us record this event for everyone and running the show. So thank you so much for everything you've done. Dr. Wortham and Dr. Turner for helping us get permission to do this in the first place. And our planning committee, Frank Perez-Moss, Ashley, Monica, Tom Pear, Gretchinger, Perrin, thank you so much for all of that. You're a fantastic team. I wouldn't want to work with anyone else. You're just wonderful. And Judy Fox, where did she go? Over there. Judy is our director for student development, and not only for the communication club, but for everything. She literally did everything. If there was a thing we did for this, she was involved in it, and I think if anyone can help work a miracle, it would be Judy. I'm gonna call her. And Justin, you led this event, this effort, and your leadership made everything come together. We couldn't thank you enough for this event today. So let's give Justin a round of applause. And things like this only happen when a community comes together. That was a really long list of people, and I want to thank all of them. And to tie back to the whole purpose of this event, which is celebrating Constitution Day, Benjamin Franklin once said, "The Constitution only gives people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it yourself." So I say to you, get involved, ask questions, and never stop pursuing the knowledge you need to make the world be the one that you want to live in.
So we do have questions, so if you don't have to run, then we're going to talk about some of these questions. If you do have to run, I do understand. We said we were going till 6 o'clock. It is 6 o'clock, but I know a bunch of you guys did ask questions. Who has these questions? Gretchen has the questions. Are they all for you? Are you going to answer them? Or? All right, awesome.
So for those of you guys who are going to hang out, I have about 4 questions that came up that I think I can answer pretty briefly. I had one good question that asked, if you moved or changed your name, how does this affect your ability to vote? And I think actually Shannon can answer this too. It really depends upon the state, but here in Florida, if you go down to your local DMV to register for your car, to get your license, right then and there, they will register you to vote. So as you go there to change your name, same sort of situation, you can register to vote right through the state government when you do that as well. So there's plenty of opportunities. Whenever you change, you got some more information? Come on up. Awesome.
For the election, it's actually my question. I one time was denied the ability to vote because I moved from one part of my town to another, and I'd gone back to my old precinct, and they said, no, you can't vote because
You can vote up to election day as long as you know which precinct to go to, your correct precinct. But you can move in from anywhere in the county or anywhere in the state, and it's considered just an address change. And all we have to do is change the address.
I was not allowed to vote in that particular election.
Was that you?
Sanibel, on Sanibel.
On Sanibel.
Yeah, I moved from one side of the town to the other, and they're like, no, you don't have the right address, they don't want to remember.
That sounds weird.
If I can add a little sort of aside too, and thank you guys for clarifying. My sister-in-law was a voter in Ohio up and through probably past 6 years. She lives in Miami, and she's lived in Miami for 6 years, and just decided recently to become a Floridian. Purposefully, she wanted to still be able to vote in Ohio. So, knowing that Ohio is also a swing state, it's very purple at times, she did that strategically. And so recently in the last primary, she became a voting population down here. So something to think about. A couple other questions. What's the difference between an open and closed primary? This is a big question, especially when my partner, who decided not to affiliate herself with a party, tried to vote in the primary here a few months ago. And so when I had come to the state, I had chosen a party, and she hadn't. And so what was sort of interesting is that when she showed up to vote for the primary, she couldn't. So in a closed primary state like Florida, you can't vote unless you've determined a major political party to affiliate yourself with, whether Democrat or Republican. Open states are just the opposite. You can always vote in the primary. Anything else you want to add to that?
I just want to add one little thing. A couple years, or a couple general elections ago, we had a situation, actually it was 2 elections back to back, where the only candidates that qualified to run for a county commission seat and the sheriff's seat were Republicans, because we're predominantly a Republican county. So nobody came in and filed against them that had a different party affiliation. So that's, in the primaries, because it was closed, the only ones who got to vote in that election were Republicans. There was a big uproar in Tallahassee about it because people felt like they were being disenfranchised, that they could not vote on 2 very important offices just because they were one party or the other. So the legislature passed a law that said if an election in a primary is going to be decided in that election, they don't have any opposition to go against in November, then everybody, no matter what your party is, in a primary could vote for those people. Everybody thought that was the greatest thing in the world, and it would have really taken care of that problem of not being able to have a voice. Unfortunately, and it happens with both parties, they will get people to come in, and you may have read about this, they'll get people to come in and register as a write-in, or qualify as a write-in candidate. At the end of qualifying, usually about the last 10 minutes before noon, they'll send somebody in there to fill out one piece of paper, and all that does is put a line in that contest, and it says write-in. Their name never shows on the ballot. They don't have to pay anything. They don't have to do anything. What it does, though, is it closes the race, because now those people in the Republican Party had somebody running against them in November, even though it was just a write-in. So our parties have found the little loopholes to get around that. But I have to give our legislature some credit for at least trying to make up for that deficit in the voting.
Thank you. A couple other questions that came up. One was really interesting. What is the present level of voter participation before voting, before early voting existed? And more about absentee ballots, what was the level of voter participation? So I think the questions are looking at the history. What's been the sort of the history of voting in this country prior to early voting and absentee ballots? And the question is complicated because it depends. Voting in this country has been a privilege that hasn't been equally disseminated, right? When we look at our founding fathers, they only gave the right to vote to a very small group of people called the electors. That was it. It wasn't until we saw Andrew Jackson's presidency that we saw poor people could finally vote. In fact, most states had created laws for voting that said that unless you owned a certain amount of property and were white and male, you couldn't vote. New Jersey actually was the only state that allowed women to vote when it first became a state, and it quickly pulled that away, really quickly, supposedly because men were going to dress up as women and vote. So the story goes. But what's really fascinating, if you look at over time, we do see huge increases in voting when we see more equality of voting. So when Andrew Jackson became president, he was really voted on by poor people. Because prior to Andrew Jackson, about 10 years before that, states had given more rights to vote to men without necessarily having a lot of property. And so that created a huge influx of new voters, right? But it also created some issues, right? We created a whole new party called the Democrats under Andrew Jackson that was really supported by the poor common man, right? So sort of an interesting history there. If you look at the Civil War, after the Civil War, African Americans had the right to vote, and it was enforced. That was the key part. It was enforced. So we saw huge increases in voter participation in the South. Again, white men and African American men can now vote. But again, we saw that disappear as states took back over their sort of Democratic Party affiliation and took away the right to vote of African Americans, really strategically. So I think the same thing sort of continues to have throughout history. So women in the 1920s, right? So another huge influx of voters. And then eventually we saw the Civil Rights Act, and most importantly, the Voting Rights Act, which, by the way, George W. Bush re-signed back into law when he was president, which ensured that African Americans had the right to vote. So again, we saw a huge voter influx in the 60s. What's sort of interesting, though, if we look at North Carolina, We saw strategic use of laws to sort of prohibit African Americans from voting, poor people from voting, minorities from voting, which is really sad. I think you might have saw it in the headlines a few weeks ago. So we can see systematic removal of those things. Gerrymandering, we gotta be careful. That can also do the same thing. Gerrymandering is redistricting. Every time we do a census in the United States, which is the count of all the people, we see new districts generated. And oftentimes those districts are created to eliminate the power of minority voters or increase the power of minority voters. So it's something to think about as we look at how our country's organized. So we usually see a flux in terms of voting. So it's a good question. Any other thoughts on that before I move on to a couple more? Everybody's silent. Well, I guess that's a good thing. You're looking at me, not looking at your cell phone. That's good. Another interesting question was on TV news stations, do politicians conceal their answers to questions they receive in order to defend their party, even if they know they're wrong? I guess it depends if you are brand new in terms of becoming a politician, or if you've been around a while, or you're just plain old smart. Paul Ryan, for example, in the Republican Party is very smart. They don't worry about him answering questions, right? So I guess it sort of depends. If you're a new candidate, you're probably gonna toe the line. Cory Booker, great example from Newark, New Jersey, who's now a senator, and he's risen up really fast. Got a great documentary called Brick City, if you ever get a chance, on Netflix. He's risen up really quickly, but he's got to toe the line for a little while. Why? Because he's so new that he could potentially be too radical, and the party will say, "Calm down. We're gonna keep you in your office for a little while, and just stay there until we can find a place for you." Not what you want, right? So it really depends how much you push the card and how smart you are. I think it's really the answer to that. What's sort of interesting about televised candidates, a little side story. My grandmother, who passed away just a few years ago, she would always say the only election she ever participated in was for Kennedy. And the reason being is she thought he was gorgeous. And I always had to laugh about that, because when he was campaigning for election against Nixon, Nixon didn't do well on TV. He was slimy looking, he was sweating, people could see like all the shimmeriness on his face. And Kennedy sat there really nice and neatly, right? Prim and proper, had good makeup. And so people on TV said, that guy, he looks presidential. But what's interesting about radio listeners to those election campaign debates, they all went for Nixon. So substance won Nixon, looks won Kennedy. So it's something to think about there, right? So I guess there's just one more question, and this one's really interesting, and it directly relates to the presentation today. What are your thoughts about those who are pushing for a change to the popular vote? So I guess the question is, what do you guys think? Should we change to a popular vote? Yes. Why? That was my question. Why do you think?
I don't know. I think it just...
Here, Monica.
People feel like their vote doesn't count. You know, and a lot of people don't even know what the Electoral College is. They've never learned about it. And you hear so many people say, well, you know, my vote doesn't count anyway, so why bother? And, you know, I feel personally, if I vote for someone, I want to vote for that person. And that's not typically what happens. And I know there's a big push right now to change it.
And it's actually going to be a hard push to change it. It is possible. I certainly agree with that. And I think there's a lot of arguments for it. The problem is it's part of the Constitution. It's in Article 2. It's also in Amendment 12. And the problem with that is it's going to take a congressional amendment to the Constitution to undo it and literally cross it out. And so that's a whole process in and of itself that could take a lot of proceedings and potentially even Supreme Court intervention. And the states have to agree upon it. And the thing about this is that small states benefit from the Electoral College. If you're a small state, right, and let's say you've got an election, it's a really close Electoral College election, and it's like 260 apiece. They both have 260 votes going in this. Oh no, Connecticut actually counts now, right? Rhode Island might matter. And so the Electoral College actually gives smaller states more power in a system where you do see bigger states with Electoral College votes. The small states can matter. And that's part of, I think, the vie for them to not get rid of it. But there is some reasons why we should. I mean, think about the election 2000. George Bush didn't have a majority. Lincoln didn't have a majority. Clinton didn't have a majority when he won. Woodrow Wilson, I mean, I can go on and on and on. We've got tons of candidates that didn't have majority wins. So.
Like when I lived in California, you know, the way the vote came across the states, and they'd be announcing who won before you even voted. I know a lot of people are, oh, why should I bother? Yeah, you know, when I lived in California, I guess I'll repeat what I said. You know, as the polls came in across the states from the east to the west, they'd be calling it on TV before we even voted. And I know that a lot of people would get very discouraged then. They'd say, you know, well, why should I bother? They already know who won.
So what's really interesting about the two states that don't actually have laws in their state that require the whole majority of popular vote to determine electors is Maine and Nebraska. And so they do a little differently. They take a look at all the districts in their state, and they say, well, in your district, if so-and-so wins, if let's say Clinton wins, then that electoral college vote goes to her. But if the one next door goes to Trump, that one goes to Trump. And that idea has become really popular with those states, and people like that idea. And then what they do is they add on two. So the person who wins the most districts gets the extra 2 electoral college votes for that state. That might be an option to make yourself more powerful in your district, to make you feel like you've got an influence over the people you live with, to really have a sort of localism of who really is important for you for president. That might be a solution. Maybe we should look at those 2 states and say maybe that's the way to go. But right now, states have created laws for their electoral college electors, and it'll be really hard to overcome I think a lot of those, but certainly something we can do.